remember this study. This was a study we did on Wednesday nights several years ago. Does this look familiar? Okay. And I think I mentioned this a while back, that hey, we had to go through that again, because we got some people that hadn't gone through it. So there are 3 parts. So here, today is the first part. And basically, sometimes we like to drop back and just study people's character, especially when they are larger than life type of characters, such as the Apostle Peter was. And so I thought maybe those of you that hadn't gone through this, or maybe you've forgotten about it, maybe enjoy it. And there are 3 parts. So this is our introductory lesson to this 3-part series. Okay. All right. So let's go to Luke chapter 5. And they'll be handing out some reading. And we'll be looking at some scriptures also. Yes, Jeannie, I will mail this to you. And you did get those other ones in the mail? Good, glad to hear that. Okay. All right, so Luke 5, 27 and 28. All right. Actually, we're going to give that to you. Luke 5, 27 and 28.
After these things, he went out and saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax office. And he said to him, "Follow me."
Oh, that's not the one I wanted.
Oh.
That's a whole other character. Sorry about that. I didn't catch that till right now. I don't think that was in the original. So, all right. All right. Well, let's just start with the introduction. Asher will let you have the introduction.
One of the most widely known of the original 12 apostles, and perhaps referred to more than any other, is the son of Barjona, the one we know as the Apostle Peter. He was a highly outspoken individual, although quite often to his known disadvantage. Yet the Lord saw a powerhouse personality in his unique and wonderful man, one that he cared enough to train and shape into a tool useful to his heavenly Father's own purpose. And in the end, this apostle would be numbered among Christ's closest followers. In studying Peter's character, we will of course note some of the highlights of his life. We should seek to draw from his unique experiences in order to learn similar lessons of discipleship, if we too are to follow Jesus. In this first lesson, we will note Peter's first encounters with Jesus.
All right. And then in that second paragraph, I'm going to call your attention again to underline the word tool, if only in your mind. Underline the word tool, because that's what this is all about. And that's what Jesus came to do, is to take people and use them as his instruments or his tools. And it's a wonderful thing if you feel you're being used by God. Isn't it a wonderful thing? If you're conscientious, right? You've just witnessed to someone, or you've just encouraged someone, you helped them along. It's a good feeling, and I believe the Lord will then, let you know that he just used you, and that's a great feeling. Okay. Brother Brian and I were building shelves yesterday, so we broke out his tools. Notice I say his tools. I go over there and use his tools. Okay?
He got some good ones too. We share.
We share, yeah. But now you ladies too, okay, if you're included. If you've ever gone out and to specifically buy a certain tool, okay, that you need for a certain task. Sarah, I know you do this all the time. And so I'm sure you have quite a tool collection. But anyway, so you're picking out a tool. And out of all the types of tools or brands or whatever of the same type of tool, you finally choose one on the shelf. It may be for certain reasons. Maybe you've heard of that brand, or maybe the packaging. It could be a million different reasons. But out of all those screwdrivers, you pick that one. Okay? And then over the course of time, as you use that, you put that tool to use. And then you realize, you know what? This is a pretty good tool. Okay? So you find yourself going back and using that tool. Okay? Maybe you have other screwdrivers, other Phillips screwdrivers in your toolbox, but for some reason you reach around, you fumble around until you find that one. Okay? Because you know it's a trusty tool. Okay? So you begin to have your preferences, right?
See, that sounds good for kitchen tools.
Yeah. Apply where needed. Yeah, right. That's spatula. Okay. Your favorite spatula. I know. I have one that, and Vicky uses this also. But I noticed that the plastic is coming off of it. Okay. But you know what? That's okay. I just take a knife. I just scrape off the little plastic that's frayed, and just use it again because I really like that particular spatula. So it can apply to anything. All right. Well, the Lord picked the Apostle Peter. And of course, now he knew him ahead of time because of the Lord's foreknowledge. The Lord knows us. And actually, he knew you before he picked you. Okay? Imagine that, and he picked us anyway. Okay? But he did pick us, right? And now he's using us as a tool. A lot of times he likes to reach into his toolbox and pull one of us out and say, I'm going to use it. But that's okay because that's what a tool is for. Okay? So I'll call your attention to that second paragraph again. Yet the Lord saw a powerhouse personality in this unique and wonderful man. Every one of you is unique. We share some common character traits because we're human. Okay? Because we're all made in the likeness and image of God. So that being true, we're going to have some common character traits. Okay? But then there's going to be some switches on your panel. I keep going back to this example. Your breaker box. You've got some switches that are up, and you've got some switches that are down. Okay, circuits that are live and circuits that aren't. And so that some things that your panel is lit up on, some switches, mine aren't. And some that mine are, yours aren't. Okay, so that's what makes us unique. Okay. But he used him as a tool for his own purpose. And then I wrote this because it's so true, that last sentence. And in the end, this apostle would be numbered among Christ's closest followers. So in the training, Peter wasn't always on board, and as we shall see. But in the end, when the close-up training or the personal training directly from Jesus was finished, Peter became one of his closest apostles. Why? Because God kept going back into that toolbox and rummaging around and finding that one and using again and again and again. And we're going to see that not all of the training that he faced was pleasant, but in the end, it was to his advantage. Okay? All right. So Andrew, we're going to give you Roman numeral number 1. And let's see here. Let's take A through B.
Okay.
Oh, do you have a lesson? You do? Okay.
Thank you, Brother Brian.
All right.
You may recall that Simon Jonah, or Bar Jonah, his original name, was first introduced to Jesus of Nazareth by his own brother Andrew, who had earlier become a disciple of John the Baptist. After John had pointed out to Andrew and another disciple that Jesus was the Lamb of God, Andrew therefore began to follow Jesus. Andrew could not wait to tell his brother Peter that he had found the Messiah. It was during this first encounter with Jesus that the Lord gave Peter a new name, Cephas, which is the Aramaic or Syriac word meaning a stone. The Greek equivalent is the name Petros, or Peter, as we say it in English. Simon, however, did not immediately begin to follow Jesus upon his first meeting with him. Evidently, he returned to his fishing business only to meet up with Jesus again at a later time.
All right, let's stop right there. In the first paragraph, I want to call out the important fact that one told another. One person told another. This is how it works. You come to know Jesus, and then you tell someone else. Okay? So we find that Andrew introduced, who had already known the Lord, introduced his brother Peter to the Lord. Okay? And this is what we're supposed to do, and this is what the Lord was training all of them to do. To not just drink it in, not just soak it up, like a sponge. But what have I always said? We soak it up like a sponge and it's just dripping with the water of the Word. But then God wants to wring us out and let all that water of the Word come out through us. Okay? Never just stay locked in. Always with the purpose to pass through. Okay? Never just to contain it. And always, we're just the vehicle. We're just the, like you said, like the word, use the word conduit. Okay? We're just a conduit. Okay? And that's how what God had in mind. So Andrew directed Peter to the Messiah. He said, "We found the Messiah. We found the Messiah." He was all excited because Israel was looking for the Messiah. Israel was looking for Messiah. Okay? I don't know about all of them, but we're introduced to a number of people who were. All right, so Brian, we'll just kind of shuffle around here a little bit. Let's give you C and D.
Okay. Jesus didn't push him, but rather let some time go by. In the meanwhile, Jesus continued to preach and teach the people, performing miracles and causing quite a stir among the nation. It was, however, on one particular day that Jesus would meet up with Simon once again. But first, he needed to visit with Peter's family. It so happened that Peter's mother-in-law had become ill with a severe fever. Jesus heard about it and stopped in to visit Peter and his wife's home while Peter was out fishing with his partners. Jesus healed her fever, whereupon she arose and attended to her duties as a host. He spent the night there and resumed his preaching the next day on the shore of Lake Gennesaret.
Okay. Now notice that the first encounter didn't take hold. I remember when Vicki began to witness to me, shortly after we were dating, I wasn't interested. It took a while before I became interested. And then of course, as my relationship with her developed, then I became interested in the things that interested her. That's just kind of how a relationship works. And so I began to listen more carefully, began to ask a lot of questions. That's a good sign when you're asking questions. That means you're interested. If you're just, yeah, what's that saying, yada yada, you know, you're not really interested, okay? But if you're starting to ask questions, that means you're showing an interest in what interests that person. So now you've got a dialogue going on, okay? Questions, answers. More questions, more answers, okay? And that's how it worked. And so in the course of time, finally I visited church. Didn't do that right away, okay? But as our relationship grew, and as I was beginning to trust in what she was saying, then finally I went to church. It wasn't church, it was a high school department, but nonetheless it was church. And so I got to see then what she was talking about with, as far as others. Others had the same interest. Okay, so it's not just her, it was others. So I began to see that others knew about this Jesus. Okay? And so that was the first encounter, but nothing happened. Okay? It wasn't until Jesus performed a miracle on his mother, or his mother-in-law, that things began then to take a different turn. Okay? All right, Allie, we're going to get to you, and we'll give you A through C.
That morning, Jesus preached on a shore nearby where Peter and his partners had been fishing the previous night. By now, the crowd had grown so large that Jesus had to slip into a nearby boat, a boat that just happened to be owned by Simon Peter. Peter and his fishing buddies had been a short distance away washing their nets when Jesus boarded it. Simon went over to see Jesus, and when he did, Jesus beckoned for him to board the boat with him and to launch out a little ways offshore because of the pressing crowd. Jesus then sat down in the boat, and right there next to Simon Peter began to preach to the people.
Sometimes to us it looks like just haphazard, random experiences. Things that just kind of fall into, well, it just happened, okay? You think this was somehow planned? Rachel, you think this was planned? You think Jesus knew that was Peter's boat? You think he knew what he was doing when he said, come on and sit down, let's row out here? Okay. Now, Peter didn't really have a clue, perhaps, of what was really happening. Okay. But Jesus had it all mapped out. And so when you are in the middle of situations, you don't always see how they string together and they're forming a picture. It's not until you have a few of them that you look back and now you can see something's happened, so a pattern has developed. Okay, it's like that puzzle. I like puzzles as an example. Not that I put a lot of puzzles together. I'll put a lot of 6-piece puzzles together. I like those, but the 1,000-piece, forget it. Okay? Can't even count to 1,000. But anyway, but when you see that you're finding these pieces and they're making sense. So once you have 4 or 5 or 6 pieces together and you have a corner and all this, then you start looking for other pieces that kind of resemble that little area. Okay? And so now it's kind of exciting. Now you're wanting to see how things are shaping up. Okay? How the picture is growing. Okay? Well, that's our life. Every circumstance is a piece of the puzzle of your life. And you're seeing, as things are pushed into their place, the picture's getting bigger. But you have to kind of look back over that to see where it begins to make sense. When you're in the middle of it, you're just holding a piece in your hand and you're not referencing it to any other piece. It's, well, what is it? Well, it's just a puzzle piece. It makes no sense to me. But when you're starting to match it with other circumstances, other pieces of the puzzle, it begins to then take on a whole new perspective. And so that's the things of our life. So I don't think this was accidental, that this whole thing happened when Jesus just happened to be there. The boat that he chose just happened to be Peter's. He was setting this whole thing up to give Peter another chance to respond to his invitation to follow him. Okay? As I said, it took several months before I finally responded, but you know what? Consistency is important. Consistency. And Vicki was consistent. Okay? Just because I didn't go to church right away, she didn't just write me off. Okay? If she was going to write me off, probably would have been for other reasons. But she didn't. She just kept easy. Okay? But she didn't. And so finally I did go to church and all that. So, all right. But the Lord knows what he's doing if we just let him play it out the way he would like it for that to happen. Okay? Granted, sometimes we interfere. Sometimes we get in our own way. Sometimes we hurt the mission. That's true. We step on our own, step on our own path. Okay? And you'll see Peter doing exactly that. But 2 things needed to be in play. 1, Jesus would not give up on Peter during the learning process. And 2, Peter would not give up on Peter during the learning process. Okay? Both are necessary. All right. Where'd we stop? Did we stop at C?
We haven't read C.
We haven't read that. Okay. You read A and B? Okay. Let's give your grandma C. Okay. We'll give her C and D.
Okay. What do you suppose Jesus may have preached to the crowd that morning while sitting there next to Simon? Do you think it may have something to do with answering God's call into service? Or perhaps along the lines of trusting God to provide all your needs while you serve him? One can only imagine. But to be sure, what was about to take place in Simon Peter's life was undoubtedly as a result of what Jesus had just preached. After Jesus had finished preaching, it was now time for the object lesson, a lesson designed specifically for Simon Peter. He told Simon to row out a little farther into the lake and to let down his net into the water to do some more fishing. Peter argued that they had fished all night and come up empty, so why bother? Yet, because he respected Jesus, he complied and lowered his net. Much to his utter amazement, the net became full of fish, so full in fact that the net began to tear. Hurriedly, they called to the partners to help them bring the fish aboard. When they attempted to empty the net evenly into both boats, and the boats began to sink because of the number and the weight of the fish.
All right. It all works out, doesn't it? Okay. So Jesus said, you need to learn a lesson. Okay. You ever feel that the Lord's had to teach you a lesson? Right? Yes. Amen. Okay. Is it for our good or for our destruction? Always for our good. Always.
Just
Okay.
wish I'd learned these lessons sooner.
Yeah, right. Right. Wish I could see ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Remember that scripture I referenced, Ecclesiastes 7:14? He's made it so that the circumstances of life have no pattern. There is no rhyme or reason. They're all jumbled up. Andrew?
What's interesting is that in the very beginning of his ministry, or of Peter's relationship with Christ, and following him, this was the very first miracle that he witnessed personally. Knowing that this is his business, his livelihood,
Yeah.
Christ could just snap his fingers and he had food galore.
Yeah.
And fast forward 3 years, And it was this same miracle that Peter recognized was the hand of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so when Christ did the same thing again,
Yeah.
and so he's like, this has to be the Lord.
Yeah.
When he did this the second time,
Yeah.
he jumped this time he didn't wait, he jumped right into the sea there and swam over to meet him.
Yeah, yeah, that was not, what Andrew's referencing is, like you said, fast forward 3 years, past the crucifixion, and past the resurrection, where Peter had another encounter, okay? That was another lesson that he needed to learn, okay? So, it wasn't over for Peter. This would be one of many, okay? Just like all of us, one of many. Okay, well, how many will it take? Kind of depends on us, doesn't it? How many lessons will it take before you finally get it? Well, it kind of depends on you. Okay? Are you easily taught, or do you find yourself resisting a lot? Okay? And in your devotion, there's a lot of pride there, and you're bucking up against the movement of God in your life. Well, then buckle up, because it's going to take a lot of lessons. Okay? A lot of lessons. All right. But, the Lord was patient with him. He said, I can see the end. I can see the end. I can see that you're going to be a polished person. So I'm going to stick with you. Okay? All right. Julie, let's give you the next one. All right. Yeah, I'm just going to bounce around here. Julie?
Is it E?
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay. All the fishermen were astonished at what took place. It was undoubtedly at that point that Simon realized that Jesus had come to call him to be one of his disciples, just as he had done with Andrew and his brother. With this message he had just heard Jesus preach moments before, still ringing in his ears, and his heart tingling with conviction from God, Simon knew that Jesus had come for him. Feeling unworthy of such an honored calling, Peter cried out to Jesus to depart from him, for he was a sinful man and didn't measure up to the task. Jesus, however, was not about to let Simon off the hook, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Peter may have felt that he would cause problems in his home, financially or otherwise, if he just dropped everything to follow Jesus. But Jesus had already prepared Simon's family for such a call the day before, when he stayed with them and demonstrated who he was and how important it was to obey him. Simon's wife and mother-in-law would be forever grateful for Jesus ministering to their needs, that Simon was free to go and follow the Messiah.
All right, so just in case he says, yeah, but my mother-in-law is ill, I need to stay close to home, whatever, Jesus already took care of that. Oh, by the way, I was there yesterday, she's fine, okay? So you're free to follow me, right? And so again, he takes care of it, he's interested in the details. He really is, okay?
And I think that, a man's concern primarily is to provide for his house. We're made to work and provide money and all that, and if he just demonstrated to Peter that he could just snap his fingers and there's all the food.
Yeah.
It's like, why wouldn't he trust him for everything else?
Right.
If he's taking care of what most men consider to be the most important thing,
Yes.
is providing. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And he just demonstrated that he has command over that.
Yeah.
Okay? So follow me, I'll take care of you. You'll never go without a meal. Okay? And if I were to ask how many of you have ever gone without a meal after following Jesus, I don't think anyone would raise their hands. You might think, yeah, but it's been kind of slim at times. Yes, but did you ever starve? Were you ever out on the street starving? That's a promise in the Proverbs. Okay, so I've seen, I forget how it's worded exactly, but I've never seen the righteous forsaken or begging bread. Okay. There are lean times. Again, that's our teacher. That's one of our teachers, to lean on the Lord. Okay, so there are those times. Okay, but that is meant to teach you. But he's not going to just kick you out on the streets, and now you're homeless and you're begging bread. Not for the righteous. Okay, it just won't happen. All right. So he's learning these lessons one at a time. This would be this is only the beginning of such a training course for him.
Do we know if Peter was raised in a home where there was faith?
We could only speculate because he was Jewish. Okay, so we're speculating that he was circumcised on the 8th day of his life. raised by Jewish parents, and raised in the rabbinical schools in the synagogue, learned the law of Moses, the Torah, just as any other Jewish boy. Okay?
So he would have been looking for, or at least been taught to look
Yes.
for.
Yes, absolutely.
Messiah to come.
Yes, yeah. So when his brother came to him, who? You know, Messiah. Who? No, it wasn't that way at all. They all were looking for Messiah. The problem was, they were looking for him, they had a different visual of who that might be. And so when he appeared as an ordinary person, no outstanding qualities or features, and didn't come in with a big sword, brandishing a big sword, rather, okay, let's go after Rome, let's take this thing, okay? He didn't come in like that. And so he kind of came in through the side, as it were, born in Bethlehem in a manger. It just, you know, and I don't know if they knew all that history, but it was just different than what they had conjured up in their heads. However, that being said, there were some who were intuitive, who were keen, who were insightful, and could see this one is different. Okay, from the other rabbis and others who had come and, you know, pretending to be the Christ, the Messiah, he is different. And so there was this connection right away. There was this connection. Okay, and so Andrew, his brother, saw it, felt that connection, and said, "You got to come. You know, you got to come see." Okay.
I think a lot of the, like you mentioned, the previous people that pretended to be the Messiah, or maybe they did consciously pretend or consciously say I'm the Messiah, but they rose up and they were just going to try to take back and do the things that they thought Messiah was going to do. So it may not have been that they said I am the Messiah. Maybe they did. Some of them sure did. Some of them probably just said, you know, let's just go and make something of this, and maybe something will happen of it.
Yeah.
And they had followers, and I think that militaristic idea that we're going to take Rome, we're going to do it by force, we're not going to pay taxes, we're going to stick it to them, and all these other things. That's what the Pharisees tried to trap Jesus in. And that's why they asked him. Says, well, is it lawful for us to pay taxes? Because a lot of these other people had made paying taxes to Rome unlawful, and you know, and so then they tried to trap him, you know. And then they said, well, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom? You know, and Judas Iscariot, I think, had that same idea. Like, well, when are we going to fight? This is supposed to be all about we're going to take out Rome, and we're going to be our sovereign nation and bring the kingdom in. And when's that going to happen?
When's that going to happen?
You know, and it certainly wasn't going to happen the way they thought it was going to happen.
Yeah. In fact, yes, Jeannie? Jeannie's got a question. Yes, Jeannie's referencing when Jesus was 12, he was teaching the elders. He was 12 years old, so he's only 3 years older than Asher. You are 9, right? Only 3 years older than Asher, and was teaching the adult, scribes, men that were learned in the law all their lives, teaching them and answering their questions. Once they realized he's kind of a sharp kid, he started throwing some hardball questions at him, and he was answering. Okay, and so.
So I can see Asher doing that.
Oh yeah. He amazes me a lot, and yet he's a kid. It's just, he loves his treehouse. You know. All right. So where do we stop? Yeah. Okay. Sarah, let's give you.
Jesus needed to challenge Simon Peter to confront him with his first love, fishing. Peter needed to learn a lesson that day, that Jesus the Master was in full control and could supply for his family, thus he didn't need to worry or hesitate following Jesus. From now on, Jesus told him, "You will catch men." And that was the day that would change Simon's life forever.
All right. From now on, you'll catch men. Oh, you're still going to be in the catching business, in the fishing business, but you're gonna fish for men, okay? And so as Andrew said, he relieved him of the worry or anxiety as a man to provide. Okay, that's just what we're built to do. And so he says, look, I've just demonstrated that I got that covered, no problem. I mean, I can make it, I can fill your net. Okay? And so what I want you to do though is reinvest that, deep-seated, manly need to provide. And when you work for me, okay, that same drive will be there, just transferred over to people. Okay, and then that's important. We need to have that interest in people. Okay, that's why we're here. Again, we're not here just to take it in. This isn't just some kind of rabbinical, school where we just come and learn the Torah, or what I'm saying. We're out. We need to catch men. We need to catch people. Okay? So that's what he told him. Okay, from now on, you will catch men. And use your fishing skills to catch men. All right, so Roman numeral number 3. And we'll give that to Philip. How about, we'll split this up again. How about A? We'll start with A. And if you read really well, we might give you another one.
Wow. I'm wondering why you gave me this one called Not an Educated Man. Not, the Lord has blessed with education or good looks. Not an educated man.
Not in any way.
Not even a little. But that didn't matter. It is no secret that the Apostle Peter was uneducated in the finer arts. After all, he had made his living as a fisherman. While he began his own ministry after Christ's ascension, others recognized this about him and had also noticed a great degree of boldness in spite of it.
All right, no slam against fishermen now, okay? And some of them might have been educated in the finer arts, doubt it. Too busy catching fish. And this level of, I'll just say, ignorance or unpolishedness was noted, was recognized by others, okay, that they were fishermen. Okay? Now, that wasn't looked down upon because the people who weren't fishermen appreciated those who were, because when they went to the market and there were fish, guess what? They didn't catch them. Someone else caught them. They didn't have to go out there. Okay? So we appreciate that on all levels. Like farming. Okay? I could not be a farmer. For one, it requires you getting up early. Okay? I could not do that. Okay? But I appreciate those who do. And invest all that time, okay? And effort and energy and expense. Okay?
When you have the leadership making sure that everybody knew they were the leadership, you didn't find any Pharisees who were fishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Teaching class and the working class.
Yeah.
Those two didn't meet.
Yeah.
And so for somebody like a fisherman, and they even recognized that he had an accent.
Mm-hmm.
This is a dialect of Galileans.
Yeah.
It's like, this, you shouldn't be teaching me. It's just weird.
Yeah.
And so what could you possibly know that they had that attitude.
Right.
And they even said that about Jesus. Where's he from? Nazareth. Does anything good ever come out of Nazareth?
Yeah. Yeah. Compton. Does anything good ever come out of Compton? Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like, like that. So, he was, but he was chosen, and that's the point. Given his education, or lack thereof, given his occupation, at what skill level it required, and it did require a lot of skill, it did. But Jesus chose him. Chose him. And notice who wasn't chosen. The Pharisees, like you said, the Pharisees. Because they just weren't all about it. They were the rabbis. And so that just wasn't going to happen. All right, so, but that didn't matter. With Jesus, it did not matter. Okay? It did not matter. All right. Marlene, how about letter B?
Such lack of worldly wisdom may offend men, but that didn't seem to bother Jesus. Jesus purposely sought Simon out to call him to be one of his followers. Yes, Peter had been a fisherman all of his life, but Greek scholars admit his writings are some of the most profound writings of the New Testament, showing a great deal of intelligence.
Well, there you go. Yeah, his writings and the construction of his writings in the original language are very respected. Okay? And so you just never know. You know, you start out humble and everything, and you're chosen and everything, and you're humble. But then you finally get it, and all of a sudden you're doing people a great blessing and great service, okay, by the skills you picked up after that. Okay? All right. And Rachel will give you a seat.
What was it then that Jesus saw in the lowly fishermen that others could not see? I believe it was Peter's leadership skills. He evidently had the core qualities necessary to be a leader in the Lord's work. What men only see on the outside, the Lord sees on the inside as well, giving a total picture of the man. But Jesus wanted Simon Peter.
You wanted him, okay? And you purposely sought him out because he wanted him, okay? So what does that say of us? You know,
We're special too.
I think Jesus wanted you, okay? In fact, didn't Paul say that when the Lord adds someone to the church, or when someone is added and the Lord's added them, it says that it pleased him to add you to this church, okay? It pleases the Lord to add you, okay? Because he's got a place and a ministry and something in mind, a purpose for you, okay? And so when we fulfill that desire on the Lord's part, and we follow through that, you know, we let him be pleased, then all is well. You know, life is good in Mayberry, right? When the Lord, it pleases the Lord to put you here, and you say yes, okay, all is well. Okay. All right. Tanya, let's give the next one.
Is that D?
Hmm?
To get a glimpse of Peter's ability to lead and influence people, one only needs to look at his leadership in having the church replace the
Apostolic.
thank you, office vacated by Judas Iscariot. Shortly afterwards, he preached a stirring message to a large crowd of Christ-hating Jews on the day of Pentecost, and watched as their hearts melted and they too became Christ's disciples. On the other hand, being the dynamic leader that he was, he could influence people in a negative way as well. More on that later as we get into Peter's story.
All right. With that being said, just on the basis of him, you can see him being a leader. I mean, a fisherman has to be self-motivated. You know, someone doesn't wake you up. I mean, you have to get up on your own, okay? And you have to go out there and do all that work, okay? So that right then and there, that's self-motivating factor, okay? Where you are motivated on your own and disciplined. That says a lot to the Lord, because that's the kind of people he's looking for as he signs them up for his work. Okay. How many have heard of the expression a lot of Christians are like wheelbarrows? They don't move until you push it. Okay. Right? I mean, push it, set it down. Okay, now you move. Your turn. Oh, okay, I gotta do it again. A lot of Christians are like wheelbarrows. Okay. And then there's another one. Oh, I'm on a roll now. Another one's a lot of Christians are like footballs. You never know which way they're going to bounce. Oh, anyway, we'll stop right there. All right. So, leadership. Some of us think that we don't have that in us. We can't be leaders. But when you think of a leader, I want you to think of that last part there, influence. You know, when you think of a leader, you don't have to head up a business or a corporation. That's not what he's talking about necessarily. Peter wasn't the head of the church, but it was his influence. Okay? So that your personality is of such value and usefulness to someone that you actually are influencing people, whether you actually realize it or not. That's leadership. Okay? If you're always just being molded and shaped by others, and so that you're just kind of this blob of jelly, and you take on no shape of your own, you have to wait till an encounter with someone to find out the shape they make you that day. Then that's not leadership. You know, that's waiting for people to mold you. But Peter had this quality inside him that he knew he could influence people. And as I mentioned here, that it could be a good influence or a bad influence. We'll pick that up later. Okay? All right. The conclusion. Vicki will give you the conclusion.
Jesus isn't as interested in our backgrounds or in our past as much as he is interested in what we're willing to do for him now in the present. People's education levels vary and their personalities differ in many ways, but it's what we are willing to allow God to do through us that counts. There is still a messianic school for training disciples. And just like Simon Bar-Jonah, that ordinary fisherman, Jesus can give us a new name and a new life after having met him and in our getting to know him in a spiritually intimate way. And just as there was much for Peter to learn, so there is much for us to learn. May we all jump in there with all fours as Peter and be willing to let him shape our hearts to serve him.
All right, so that's our introduction to, Peter's introduction to Jesus, okay? So we'll look at his ministry further in the ongoing training session. Okay. All right. Any thoughts? Appreciate your comments. Any other thoughts? What's going on in your heads? Are they blank? Rachel's